Mo. I'll be back again with another video. This one is titled Creepy Things That Were Normal During World War One. I seen this after the last video about medieval times. And I think we're gonna react to this one. The guy's name is Nutty History. Which makes sense. Self-explanatory. But now I guess we're crazy fix. Let me get this real quick. That's about to be for the next reaction video right there. But yeah, let's get to the video, man.
It was the first truly industrial war, fought with shiny new automatic weaponry and old school tactics that couldn't keep up. A combination that inflicted horrors beyond imagination. The results were catastrophic. An estimated 20 million soldiers and civilians died, much of it beyond the public's view, lost in the fog of war. But as that fog cleared, the grim reality set in. Bodies decomposing in trench walls and men gone mad from chemical agents. This was a conflict the scale of which had never been seen before, and no one survived it unscathed. Welcome to Nutty History, and today let's find out what creepy things were considered normal during World War I. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. You've heard of Tetris, right? If you want a kind of visual aid to help you imagine what being in a World War I trench was like, picture those blocks piling up and piling up. You try your best to fit the different shapes together, but eventually that pile climbs higher and higher, and then you lose.
I tried everything.
Get bro, the ass need to fucking stop.
But nothing stuck.
Now, imagine that those blocks are bodies, and that they are piling up in muddy holes being bombarded by artillery fire day and night. Sound fun? German veteran Ernst Junge put it pretty bluntly. Trench fighting is the bloodiest, wildest, most brutal of all. Of all the war's exciting moments, none is so powerful as the meeting of two stormtroop leaders between narrow trench walls. There's no mercy there, no going back. The blood speaks from a shrill cry of recognition that tears itself from one's breast like a nightmare. The trenches were not supposed to exist like this. Early in 1914, infantry on both sides dug shallow ditches after advances stalled. French and British soldiers expected to move on within days. Instead, automatic weaponry and artillery made standing upright lethal, and those temporary cuts in the earth hardened into permanent positions. Life inside them wasn't combat in the usual sense. British officer and poet Robert Graves described trenches as places where men lived like animals, eating, sleeping, and waiting underground for weeks at a time. Relief was irregular. Privacy didn't exist. The ground was home. In places like Flanders, the water table sat just below the surface. Trenches flooded constantly.
I'm really wondering, right? Do y'all think the trenches from World War One is actually still there? Like when niggas would actually dig into that shit, like y'all think they started like stacking dirt on top of the holes after the whole thing was done, or like, you know, what y'all think happened to their trenches in World War One? That's basically what I'm saying.
Men slept sitting or standing.
Are they still there, or are they
shelling
piled up and covered?
Burying soldiers alive. Survivors dug frantically, knowing that minutes meant the difference between rescue and suffocation. And then there were the rats. It's quite possible there were more of them in the trenches than there were soldiers. They were living their best lives amidst all this horror, feeding on rations and bodies, growing large and unafraid. Soldiers describe seeing some as big as cats or even small dogs. There are stories of soldiers trying to execute them for sport between artillery bombardments. It never made a dent. Disease spread quickly. Dysentery and infection ran rampant. And by the time the war ended, millions had perished without being hit by a single shell or bullet. Without antibiotics, small wounds turned serious. There was also trench fever, a louse-borne illness that caused fever, severe pain, and exhaustion. And it affected hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the Western Front. For the Allies alone, there were about 800,000 recorded cases, often leaving men incapacitated for weeks or months. Prolonged exposure to cold and water caused trench foot. Winter temperatures on the Western Front hovered around freezing, often dipping below zero. Tissue expired. Inspections became routine. Severe cases ended in amputation. For some, losing a foot was the only exit.
Damn.
Imagine putting a jet engine on a wooden biplane built by the Wright brothers. You think that thing would get up into the air? Certainly not. What would happen, though, is as soon as the ignition switch was flicked, that jet engine would tear through that flimsy wooden frame faster than you can say Boeing, and everything would likely explode in flames. This is what happened in World War I, except the jet engine was weapons tech and the wooden biplane was outdated military tactics. European armies entered the war expecting movement and short engagements. Officers planned advances measured in miles. Instead, modern artillery and automatic weapons created slaughter zones that stopped movement almost immediately. British officer Harold Macmillan wrote home describing a battlefield that looked empty while hundreds of thousands of men lurked underground, firing at enemies they never saw. Automatic weaponry reshaped everything. Weapons like the German MG-08 and the British Vickers could fire hundreds of rounds per minute. Entire attacking units were cut down in seconds, often before reaching the midpoint between trenches. New weapons appeared in the space between the lines. German troops introduced flamethrowers in 1915, sending jets of burning fuel into trenches. Imagine hiding in a trench and then seeing a gush of flame spitting at you like the dragon fire from Game of Thrones. Tanks followed in 1916. They were slow, mechanically unreliable, and often
That was the
broke down
first
in plain
tanks.
view of
That
the
shit
enemy.
ugly as hell.
Even when they failed, their presence unsettled infantry who had never seen armored vehicles move across a battle.
Oh, y'all seen this one movie, bro? Like, niggas was getting ran over by them Jones. Like, that ass. And then I remember one time, they even said they tried to make, like, I don't know if that was for trucks or what, but they made, like, these weightless, tires and shit. I'm saying, I don't know where that shit came from, but.
The strip of ground between opposing trenches became known as no man's land. The term spread in late 1914 and described an area no army truly controlled. It was a terrifying place. The scholar Fran Brereton wrote that there were men drowning in shell holes already filled with decaying flesh, wounded men beyond help from behind the wire, dying over a number of days, their cries audible and often unbearable to those in the trenches. Crossing it meant exposure to everything at once. Automatic machine weaponry fire, artillery bursts, mortars, riflemen, barbed wire, and sometimes poison gas. The ground was uneven, cratered and slick with mud. Men were hit and left where they fell, unable to move forward or back. Those wounded there often stayed there. Stretcher bearers entered no man's land after attacks under the same fire. In places like Verdun, in northeast France,
Bro, these
that
is clips
ground is
from
still
movies, bro.
dangerous today. Entire zones are sealed off because unexploded shells and chemical residues still sit beneath the soil.
I've seen plenty of power
Bro,
packs
get-
in my 15 years of reviewing tech, but this Ridge one quickly became a favorite. So this?
How about this one? You and a few of your friends are hanging out at a cafe one day. For some reason, you start smelling hay. It's curious because you're not near a farm. It doesn't smell bad, though, so you continue your conversation, sipping a coffee. But when your friends start writhing in pain around you, and you start to feel like you're drowning, unable to breathe, and then nothing. The aroma that just killed you is from phosphine gas. It smells faintly of hay and causes delayed death, and it was the deadliest gas used in World War I. Soldiers often felt fine after exposure, only to literally drown hours later as their lungs filled with fluid. All told, some 1.3 million people died from chemical gas in the war, and phosphine was responsible for the majority of those deaths. World War I was the first war where chemical weapons were used on a mass scale, and no one was ready for them. The first large-scale gas attack came on April 22, 1915, near Ypres. German forces released chlorine gas against French and colonial troops. Survivors described a green cloud rolling across the ground, followed by choking, burning eyes, and collapse. Thousands fled their trenches in panic, leaving a gap in the line that stretched for miles. The program behind these attacks were led by a German chemist named Fritz Haber, who believed gas could break morale faster than artillery. He took industrial chemicals and adapted them for a battlefield. At the same time, he developed nitrogen fixation, a process that made modern fertilizers possible. Without his method, large-scale agriculture wouldn't be possible, because we'd have no way of replacing the nitrogen crops removed from the soil fast enough. The irony of Prince Albert's life is that he's once responsible for the deaths of millions, while also responsible for a technology that allowed us to feed millions. Anyway, early gas attacks came with no warning and no protection. Soldiers had no masks, men pressed socks, rags, or cloths over their faces. Chlorine was soon followed by the aforementioned phosgene, introduced later in 1915. 2 years later, in 1917, mustard gas entered the battlefield. It killed fewer men than phosgene, but injured far more. It burned skin, blinded eyes, and lingered in soil and clothing for weeks. It didn't need to be inhaled either. Men blistered where their uniforms touched their skin. Some took weeks to pass away. Nurses recorded what followed. Vera Britton, who was unsurprisingly British, described soldiers with mustard-colored burns and blind eyes all sticky and stuck together, always fighting for breath, with voices a mere whisper, saying that their throats are closing and they know they will choke. Gas truly changed how soldiers experienced the front. Shells could be heard. Gas, on the other hand, arrived quietly. Alarms, drills, and masks turned breathing into a conscious act. Panic spread faster than the clouds themselves. Let's say you're a truck driver in some dystopian hellscape and you get into a serious accident on the highway. Luckily, you walk away without any visible injuries. But afterward, your hands shake and loud noises make you flinch and you can't even sleep. A week later, your boss tells you that you need to drive again. When you refuse, you're accused of faking it and you're executed. Sound harsh? Well, something very similar happened to a British soldier named Harry Farr. What your truck driver alter ego experience is similar to shell shock. Today, we call it PTSD. During World War II, it was called battle fatigue. During World War I, there wasn't any agreement on what it was supposed to be. By late 1914 and early 1915, armies began encountering soldiers who were physically unharmed but unable to function. Men trembled uncontrollably. Some couldn't speak, others froze in place, unable to move or respond to orders. Doctors and officers had no shared language for what they were seeing. British non-commissioned officer Frederick Holmes described watching a man crying and shaking like an aspen while waiting to be evacuated. Others recalled soldiers standing on the fire step after bombardments, staring forward, unresponsive, even when spoken to directly. Medical responses varied a great deal. Some doctors believed shell shock was a neurological injury caused by blast waves. Others treated it as a weakness or a lack of discipline. Treatment ranged from rest and evacuation to electric shock therapy intended to force men back into functioning. Military leadership often framed breakdown as a failure of character. Soldiers who couldn't return to the line risked being charged with cowardice or malingering.
That's
Harry
that
Farr was one of
bullshit.
them. A private in the West Yorkshire Regiment, Farr had been hospitalized multiple times in 1915 and 1916 for shell shock. Medical records noted trembling, panic, and an inability to function under shell fire. He was sent back to his unit anyway. Each return to the line was followed by another collapse. In September 1916, with preparations underway for the Battle of the Somme, Farr was ordered back to the front. He refused. Witnesses later described him shaking and unable to control his movements. He was arrested and charged with cowardice. At his court-martial, Farr had no legal representation. Medical testimony about his prior hospitalizations was not meaningfully considered. The panel declared him mentally fit for duty. Farr was then sentenced to death and executed by firing squad on October 18, 1916. He was 25. His widow was even denied a pension, and his family carried the stigma for decades. In 2006, the British government issued a posthumous pardon to Farr, along with 305 other soldiers executed under similar circumstances. But obviously, the damage was done. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all the nuttiest history content. You can check out another video we made like this in the past, which is creepy things that were normal in the Vietnam War. The link is in the description of the video and included in the end screen too. Before you go,
I will be watching
what
that. But anyways, that's the end of the video. Kinda enjoyed that, but I kinda didn't. I really don't know. But you know, I'm just happy to get another video out of the way. Let me know what video y'all want to react to the reaction. We bipping.